All right, turning now to Michigan today as the place to be for the presidential race. This morning, Republican Veep nominee J.D. Vance was in Shelby Township at the Shelby Township Police Department. You see right there, it is the Republican counter to the Democrats hitting all 7 swing states this week. Vice President Kamala Harris heading to Detroit this afternoon as we take a live look at Metro with her new running mate, Governor Tim Walz. They will be near Metro Airport for a rally at 7 o'clock tonight. The governor will be there, as well as Detroit Mayor Mike Duggan, many members from the Democratic congressional delegation on this one. Right after this show today, just after 1 o'clock, I'm going to be speaking with the governor about campaign plans, and we'll have that for you at clickondetroit.com, plus our coverage of both Republican and Democrats tonight on Local 4 News at 6 o'clock. All right, to get a little context now, a day after the primary elections on the biggest races in the state and the national impact that Michigan has, let's bring in Dave Giulio, of course, political science professor at Oakland University and director of OU's Center for Civic Engagement. Dave, it's good to see you the day after the primary. Not a lot of huge surprises, but before we get into those results, let's talk a little bit about the atmosphere for the presidential race and, of course, all roads leading through Michigan and the visits that we are going to be seeing from both campaigns starting off today.
Yeah, well, good afternoon, Christy. Thanks for having me. I think you said it correctly that all roads to the White House lead through Michigan. And folks need to get used to seeing Kamala Harris, Tim Walz, Donald Trump, and J.D. Vance, right? Because they are going to be here from now until Election Day. So over the next 3 months, we're going to see not only a bunch of the candidates, we're going to see a lot of their TV ads, too.
Let me ask you this. If you were actually giving these campaigns and both of them advice, because when we talk about the 7 most important states, and a lot of them through the Midwest and Pennsylvania, Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin, what would you say specifically for candidates to zero in on for the voters of Michigan to try to swing those undecideds?
Yeah, that's really interesting, Christy, because I think that elections, no matter if they are for President of the United States or dog catcher, right, they come down to contrast. And candidates are going to look to create contrast between themselves and their opponent on issues where they have a competitive advantage, right? So when one candidate is, let's take the economy, for instance, right? We've seen inflation wreak havoc over the last few years. High prices remain for groceries and gas and everything in between. We saw the market have a tough day earlier this week. So when those kinds of things happen, it's tougher for the incumbent party to run on that record. So there's an instance where Donald Trump and J.D. Vance are going to have an advantage over Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. So they're going to want to talk a lot about the economy. They're going to want to talk a lot about immigration. And the Harris ticket is going to want to stay away from those things and talk about things where they have an advantage. So listen for them to talk a lot about reproductive rights and things that are teed up for the Democrats.
You know, so goes the top of the ticket, and we can see the trickle-down effect. Let's go ahead and start to look at some of the major races here that we're going to be watching in November. Starting off with Senate, it wasn't really a surprise here with the primary. Now you have Alyssa Slotkin and Mike Rogers, and nationally, people are looking at saying that this is a toss-up, even though the Democrats have always has had a stronghold on the Senate seats here in the state over the last several decades.
Yeah, and I think that it's a toss-up because, number one, there are 2 strong candidates, right? If we were to look at the resumes of Alyssa Slotkin and Mike Rogers, it's hard not to be impressed with both of them, right? They have in a lot of great experience. They have work in national security, intelligence. They've both been in Congress, so they bring a lot to the table. The other element that makes it a competitive race and toss-up is the fact that it's an open seat, right? There's no incumbent who is going to have an advantage like others would. So, those two things combined make it a toss-up race, and because of that, we're going to see, again, a lot of the candidates around the state, and we're going to start to see ad after ad after ad.
When you look at some of the congressional districts, I mean, that will always, that are leaning already with where, you have an incumbent coming out of, one thing I want to look at is the 10th. Cara Marlinga taking on John James again, and this is a repeat of 2022. What do you see could be a difference maker in that race?
Yeah, this one I think is going to come down to turnout. And I think it's important to note, as you did, that this is a rematch between John James and Cara Marlinga in November. And in 2022, Carl Merlinga came closer than just about anybody thought in defeating John James. I mean, he was within a few thousand votes, if that. This time around, however, I think John James has got the edge for two reasons. Number one, he's running from a position of strength as an incumbent, and two, the turnout dynamics are likely to be different between 2022 and 2024. 22, of course, lots of Democrats were buoyed by the top of the ticket and Governor Whitmer's really runaway re-election over Tudor Dixon. So Democrats buoyed in 2022. That's not going to be the same thing as 2024, when Republicans are likely to be at par or maybe even a little bit more excited to vote this time around for Donald Trump and other Republicans on the ballot.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting when you talk about turnout and looking at specific groups and making sure that they get the turnout. And we're hearing a lot from the UAW, who are going to be making the appearance today. Sean Fain with Vice President Kamala Harris, and really kind of making sure that turnout happens for specific areas. All right, Dave, I'm going to have to let you go right now. I really appreciate the time. Of course, we're going to be also watching the 7th Congressional District, Curtis Hertel and Tom Barrett. Of course, that's Alyssa Slotkin's seat that she's leaving to go ahead and run for Senate on. It's good to see you. We'll talk soon.
You too. Thanks, Christy.